know it sounds kind of selfish, but a poll of 500,000 people said the number 3 concern when having a baby is lack of time for other things. And I genuinely prepared myself to stop being consistent at the gym, but the opposite actually happened. I got in the best shape of my life after our son was born, and I didn't even have to like build a home gym or even get extra childcare. So I want to explain exactly what I learned through all this process so I could be consistent at the gym with a full-time job and a baby. The first big thing was to remove the mystery. There's a good reason that we fear the unknown. Back in, caveman times, the fearless people who just waltz into the jungle got eaten alive. But the ones who were afraid of what could be in there actually survived. So when I imagined what my schedule would look like with a baby, I imagined the worst. But in reality, newborns sleep 14 to 17 hours a day. And that drops to still like 14 hours until 1 year old. So yeah, it's not the end of your life to have a kid. And once I removed that mystery around the schedule, I could start to work on a realistic solution. Obviously, I had to find a priority. For me, my priority was the gym. I couldn't go out with friends multiple times a week or go play pickup soccer. But once you know you can carve out like an hour or 2 every day, the real test comes with gaining momentum. I took a few weeks off of the gym at first when the baby was born, but getting back to the gym can be tough. The biggest hack that I use is this concept of momentum. Imagine you're riding a bike. With no effort, you could just take your feet off the pedals and cruise for a while, right? That's because you've built momentum. But if you stopped, it would take a lot more energy to get going again. And it's the same thing with any positive habit. If I eat right or I go to the gym for like 3 to 4 days in a row, it becomes easier. And once I've gained that momentum, it's actually harder for me to stop. Like when I'm in a really good groove of going to the gym, I hate taking days off because of all the momentum I've built. So what I do is I remind myself during the first 3 to 4 days, it's gonna get a lot easier just around the corner if I just grind those out. And that also works in the kitchen, but I made a huge change once our son was born. I ordered a meal prep service. And I know this is like a super practical tip, but I would have been screwed without it. We all know that nutrition is more important than exercise when it comes to at least aesthetics. Personally, I cannot out-train a bad diet, but I've seen like super thin people who barely work out because they eat right. If it was on me to cook every single meal, eventually it's gonna catch up to me and I'm going to cheat. How can I have a full-time job, take care of the baby, and make my own macro-friendly meals?
I'm not handling the money, driving the car, and talking on the phone all by myself.
Now, when picking a service, for me it was actually tough. I had to go through like several to find the right one. I wanted something that would be under 400 calories per meal, that fit my macros, that had ingredients that I liked, and a place that was local. Because there's a ton of like national companies that will ship you frozen meals that were cooked in some kitchen like 1,000 miles away. Forget that. I get meals for like $8 a pop, so it's still affordable, and I might go back to cooking my own stuff in the future, but the best way for me to be 100% in the kitchen is to have somebody else do the work. Next, I made a paradigm shift in the gym from exercise to training. I do think that having a new goal is a great way to get you refocused, right? But I look at people who just go into exercise as people who don't really have a plan. They just go in to, get a sweat on and just roam from machine to machine. But people who are there to train know exactly what they're doing before they walk into the gym, and they have a specific goal. I switched to training for the first time in like my 13-year lifting career when our son was born. I made a whole video about the training plan that I followed, which I'll link at the end of this video. But without this, I would have never gotten in the best shape of my life. And by the way, it's totally cool if you just exercise. I exercised for, like I said, 13 years, and it was like the perfect thing for my mental health. But once I got serious about reaching my aesthetic goals, I needed a training plan. The way I started was asking, so should I cut or should I bulk? And my philosophy is, if you're a guy over 15% body fat, then start with a cut. If you're under 15% body fat, start with a bulk. So I started with a cut, and I got my numbers straight. I went to an online calculator that I'll put in the description to find my numbers, because that's key to any plan. It turns out about 1,800 calories a day is what I needed to lose fat safely. I hit that number most of the time, and I tracked it on MyFitnessPal. In the gym, I focused on progressive overload for the big 4 compound lifts. That's the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, and the overhead press. Since I was in a cut, it's not realistic for me to keep on adding weight to the bar, but I just tried to maintain my strength. At the end of about 12 weeks, when our son was 3 months old, I had cut from about 20% to 10% body fat. And it turns out being stuck in the house, not going out to eat, was huge. And because I always had healthy meals ready, I wasn't gonna go get Uber Eats. And once I gained momentum with all this, it just got easier and easier. I fit gym time around work and the baby. My job is from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5 days a week, and the baby is also on a tight schedule. Everyone follows a different method, but we chose Moms on Call. It's a great book. Here's how it works. From 0 to 4 weeks, he naps for 2 hours between every feeding, and my wife and I take turns. It's the same for 4 to 8 weeks, but with 1 hour to feed and to play in between naps. From 8 to 16 weeks, awake time increases to 90 minutes, and then up to 2 hours after 16 weeks old. Now at that point, especially with full-time jobs, we needed help with childcare. But all the way back since the day he was born, you can see if you run a tight ship, there is always time to fit in the gym either in the morning or at night. But none of this is possible without the 5th thing, having a supportive partner. And there's a trick to this because this is the one that's out of your control. The first thing that I did with my wife was I gave her something huge. She wanted to prioritize sleep. So I took 100% of the nights, which sounds like a huge trade to make, but that's how important getting to the gym was for me. And it actually helped. I mean, it helped me manage my calories because I went to bed earlier every night to get enough sleep. And the second thing is, honestly, she doesn't want like a grumpy partner. Lifting is super important to me personally and to my mental health. And she respects that. If she didn't respect that, I would have to explain why it keeps me grounded. The analogy I would use for her is when she watches her favorite TV show. She takes an hour or so to mentally uncheck, and it refreshes her to deal with other humans. If you are a guy, the mother is doing most of the work anyway, but my wife was willing to give me just one thing. And I wasn't gonna abuse that by fitting in a whole bunch of things. But that 90 minutes in the gym every day was reasonable. Now, earlier I talked about that video of how I actually got fit, and I touched on a bit of it earlier in this video, but if you want a detailed breakdown of exactly what I did to finally get to 10% body fat, check it out.